You're listening to Chelmsford Community Radio, and this morning I'm joined in the studio by two special guests who we are about to meet, and we're going to be talking to them individually. And the first of those guests is a Chelmsford man whose experiences have led him on a campaign to help highlight and raise funds for a rare form of cancer. So welcome and good morning to Steve Dunster. Morning.
Good morning, Gary. Thank you for having us here.
Thanks for joining us this morning. So tell us a bit about you. How long have you lived in Chelmsford? You retired in 2016, but what were you doing before that?
Well, my wife and I used to run a small engineering company. We used to supply tools to a lot of the machine shops in the area. My wife previously, she'd worked at Ford's and she was in the tooling office buying the tools for Ford, so we came pretty well prepared, for our business that we set up. We ran for about 20 years. We worked as a team. That was it. We got married in 1972, but we'd bought a house out in Colchester and then moved back into Chelmsford. Sorry. That's all right. I've stalled.
Don't worry. That's fine. Let me just lead in with a question then for you. And you're just one of those families that have been affected by cancer and sadly lost your partner. But this cancer is considered to be a rare form. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a very, very rare cancer. The problem with it is, it seems now I've obviously been involved with it all. There was no research being done into it. That's hence why we set up the foundation for Sharons charity. What happened to us? I mean, our sort of story was, we'd been away in 2015. We decided we were going to shut our company. 65 years old. We hadn't made a lot of money, but we made enough to say, that's it. We're going to have the rest of our life. It wasn't to be. Over the Christmas, she'd had a few problems. And on January the 8th, a tumour, shall we say, came out of her. And it was a horrendous moment. Within 2 to 3 days, first of all, the people in Broomfield had not seen it before. They weren't really aware of what it was, our local doctor. But within 2 to 3 days, we'd realised what it was. And it was so rare. It was a problem to find somebody to help us. We were told actually that she was going to die. We went through all of that. Went to Ipswich, talking about an operation. They said they couldn't do it. There wasn't enough. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, they said that there wasn't enough margin to operate and remove the tumours from her. We went back the next day, and they said we want to have another further look, and they turned around and said there was. It was like the whole weight had just been lifted off of us. Absolutely incredible. But it was a very serious operation. Without going too deep into it, she lost basically the bottom half of her body. She had stoma bags. She had all sorts of problems. She had 34 days in Ipswich Hospital. It was the longest that anybody had been in the Stir ward in Ipswich. She nearly died on the table. It was just a succession of lots of problems. But what happened to us, we had a situation where they came in one day, it was a Saturday morning, and they said, we've got it. We've actually got it. So we had about a month and a half of a different life, not the retirement that we expected at all. I had to learn all about stoma bags and all that side of things. And then it came back. One of her scars became a little bit red. We saw the surgeon said, come in. That was the Friday I rang him. Monday morning we were in. And to be frank, the surgeon stood at the bottom of the bed at 5 o'clock that evening, and he cried. He said, there's nothing we can do. And 3 of the nurses actually laid on the bed with Sharon, because they got to know her. I mean, it was a month. She'd lived with them all. She was like mother hen to them. All the young nurses used to come in with all their problems, and she'd sit there and sort them out. So that was that. We came out, and that's when we really got to know Tim Crook. We've met him once before. This is the consultant. We met him in Broomfield, with a view to, with the immune therapy, actually shrinking the tumours before the op. That was one of the options at the very start, but unfortunately there wasn't time. I mean, they told her that it was a matter of weeks she could be dead. so she had to go ahead with this huge operation. But anyway, we came out of having the operation and coming home, and then as I say, it coming back again. We went to see Tim, and he said, right, he said, what I've done is, he said, I've already arranged to have this drug put into Broomfield Hospital, and we'll go with the immune therapy because we still might have a chance of getting it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was quite interesting because Broomfield was not actually a cancer hospital, and Tim had actually arranged for this drug, which was only released in September, and within weeks he'd actually got it in Broomfield for Sharon. He was working ahead of us, he knew what was coming, and that's how Tim and I got to know each other. We went on, the inevitable happened, Sharon passed away, and we had a funeral. Chelmsford crematorium was packed. We were in a car club, and all the TVR cars turned up. It was quite an event. We had £5,000, so I went and saw Tim and said, look Tim, I've got this £5,000, what can we do? With great respect to the normal cancer research funding and charities, I said, this is so rare, this cancer, is there a place we can put this money that's going to attack this cancer? And he turned around and he said, well, no, nobody's researching it. And then a few weeks later I met him, and we had a further chat, and he turned around and he said, right, he said, we can do some research at Imperial College. This is where now has come into it. And what's happened is Tim and I are actually funding a young lady to do her PhD in the Imperial College, specifically researching this cancer. We're the only people in England doing it. The only problem with it is it comes with a cost, and it costs £88,000 for 3 years research. But Tim and I are funding it ourselves.
We're also joined in the studio by Neil Syed, who is a researcher and has a PhD in the research of cancer. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us a bit about yourself and your background and how you become to be a researcher and to be involved in cancer research.
Okay, so I did my degree in Glasgow in medical microbiology, and then came to London to further my education and did a PhD at Imperial College. So my PhD was in looking at immunity, trying to understand how immune cells work. And then I met Tim actually at a meeting. So after my PhD, I joined his group to work on cancer. So that was my first real introduction to cancer. And Tim was really interested at the time with breast cancer, ovarian and melanoma. So I did a 3-4 years postdoc with him. And then I got the opportunity to set up my own group, and then I did that, funded by the Brain Tumor Research Campaign, but this time to work on brain cancer, another very rare cancer. And so actually that's when I started. So my link with Tim remained as a clinician in cancer. We collaborate extensively to this day. I've known him now for 20 years. So although I focus a lot on brain cancer, primary brain cancer, that's cancer that starts in the brain, I'm also interested in cancers that go to the brain from other sites, like melanoma, like breast cancer. So that's where my story began.
Excellent, that's great, brilliant, very nice. Let's just go back and I think talk about introducing Tim. So I think I'll ask about how you. He's a Chelmsford man, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's a Chelmsford man. So let's ask about, and is he also a cancer researcher, or is he?
Yeah, because his history, he was also in Scotland, wasn't he?
So he actually was a scientist, a cancer research scientist, and then did medicine after his academic. So it's his ideal situation to really understand the science behind the clinical side of cancer, if you like.
So Steve, you were introduced to a man called Tim Crook, who is also a local man. He's from Chelmsford. So tell us about that when you met him. Who is he? What does he do?
I first met him when Sharon was diagnosed. Quite a character. Went into his surgery. Very forthright guy. First thing he said was, "My name's Tim. It's not Mr. Crook, Dr. Crook, or any of that." And we struck it up. I mean, we got on well. but he was, the first time I met him really was there. His idea was to try and shrink these tumours before the operation to give them margin, because obviously they have to cut the tumours out and they need a gap of skin or to be able to cut to get it out clean. That was the first time I met him, but he just looked and he looked at all the scans and said no. He said if this takes off and accelerates really quickly, we just haven't got the time. The operation is the only option that you really have at this point in time. That was the first time. So and then we saw him. We went back in and saw him a few times. He was involved in the whole sort of situation of looking at it, but I didn't quite realise exactly what he was doing in the background. He was getting ready if it did go wrong. But then he did. After Sharon was in hospital, he said, "Yeah, I'm looking at sorting this out." He said, "It's not the end. We have another chance with immune therapy," and that's what happened to us when she came out and it came back. But she had, there were 5 shots of this immune therapy. It's quite heavy. It's double treatment. It's not like a normal cancer treatment. So you're in there for a long time having the chemo. She had two lots of it, but no, it wasn't to be.
Yeah. And now, you know Tim Crook. You've worked with him before, so you're aware of his work. How did you meet him?
Again, it was as a scientist, you often go to research meetings, internationally, nationally, and I just met him at one of these meetings, chatting away. And at the time, I was also looking for a research job, having just finished my PhD. So he had the opportunity, I applied, and I got the job, and that's when we started. So that's when my real interest in cancer started. So and I said his interest was at the time breast, ovarian and melanoma.
So mucosal melanoma is known to be a very rare form of cancer. Has there been much research done so far, and how are you involved in this kind of research?
So mucosal melanoma is a very rare cancer, as is brain cancer, which has been my primary sort of research for the past 10 years. Very little research is going on in the UK, mainly because it is rare. There is no tissue samples for people to do research on, but more importantly, there's no funding. So with rare cancers, that's one of the main issues. Because it's so rare, there are no funding bodies that will fund a rare cancer. There's a lot more going on, a little more going on in the USA, because of just the sheer number of people. So I think so far 1% of cancers are mucosal melanoma. If you consider how big America is, that's tiny. So the numbers in the UK would be considerably less.
Is this the type of cancer that you are mainly focusing on as far as research goes?
Well, it's part of it actually. So my main laboratory works on brain cancer, which is my main funding. So the Brain Tumor Research Campaign fund brain cancer, but any cancer that goes to the brain is part of that study. So we have, I guess, sort of part of the funding that's raised by mucosal melanoma supporters will go specifically for mucosal melanoma research. But the good thing is, because we're funded by Brain Tumor Research, we have the infrastructure. So the lab is funded by Brain Tumor Research, and we can use the resources to then study mucosal melanoma. So I think it's an ideal situation to be in, because to just study mucosal melanoma, I would never get enough funding to have a lab with all the equipment that I need. Yeah.
Okay. So where does the funding come from at the moment for most of your research?
It's from charities. Again, started off small. So Brain Tumor Research Campaign started off like Steve. Wendy Fulcher, her husband died of brain cancer, and she wanted to do something. And with her as a neurosurgeon at the time, they set this charity. And I came right at the beginning as a scientist.
So for me, meeting you today, and obviously we've met for the first time, has actually been quite inspirational, and I believe that people like you are the real superheroes of the world. In the work that you're doing, it really is inspirational. But I'd love to know what led you to do the work that you do.
Well, thank you for that remark. I mean, there's a lot of people that are sort of have the same kind of interest as me. So I really got interested when I was at university, when we had a lecture on cancer actually, and just to understand what is cancer, what actually is it, and the simplest explanation is it's a cell or within the body that's just lost control and it grows. So I was really curious to try and understand, why does it lose control, what happens, and that's where the interest started.
Wow. I think you're amazing. I do. People like you.
It's not a job. I really enjoy what I do, and I think you ask lots of cancer scientists. It's a vocation, and I think you need that desire to kind of really take
something you've dedicated your life to, isn't it? Yeah.
And the frustration is when you can't do it because you don't have the funds
to do it.
That's the most frustrating thing.
After Sharon passed away, as I said, we had this £5,000 which went into the pot, but then we had to raise this £88,000. So I sat and thought about it. We've done, with Sharon's mother, who by the way is 96 years old, we've done some coffee mornings and they've raised money. It's been quite incredible. But on the fundraising side of it, Sharon and I were always into our cars. I needed something to do, obviously, because when Sharon passed away we shut our company, so I was retired, shut my company all within a year. So sat there and thought about it, so we thought first of all we'll do a charity ball. So we went to Channels, we booked it, we set it all up. As I say, we're involved with cars. There's a guy called Richard Noble, land speed record holder, and he runs a lot of land speed record teams. Known Richard because Sharon and I were involved with fundraising and doing events with that. And I spoke to him and he agreed to come down and do an after dinner talk. So then I've got a terrific venue up there. A lot of my friends brought their really nice cars along, and we set the evening up, and it was quite incredible. We raised £5,500 in one night, and there was only 120 people there.
Amazing. So
it was an amazing fundraising night. So we did that, and then I to be honest, I sat there and I thought, right, what should we do? You can do so many coffee mornings. And again the car theme sort of came through. We'd had at Channels, the mayor came and opened it. We had certain Mr. Appleton, as he came along and he did the oh sorry, I've lost it. It's not a town crier, what is he? He's a Toastmaster. That's right. Yeah, we had Tony Appleton come along and he was a Toastmaster. And it all sort of went together, but having the mayor there was quite good, because then I was invited to go to the mayor's dinner, and we actually got presented with certificates for what we've done, Tim Crook and I, what we've done for research into mucosal melanoma. So that was quite a boost. Yeah, then it was on to the next fundraising thing, and I got invited to go to Chelmsford City Racecourse. We thought we were just going to do another dinner. I thought, yeah, I can handle that. Never organised anything like that in my life before, really, but I've done this one, so I can handle it. We'll just make it bigger. We sat at this meeting and it just evolved. Talking about cars, they wanted to do some car events up there. They didn't really have the contacts to do a big car event, and it was one of those moments in life I opened my mouth. And now I've got a 2-day car event going on in July. It's going to be huge. We've got Richard Noble again at an after dinner talk. We've got Walls of Death. We've got all sorts of things for kids, but I'll tell you a bit more about that a bit later. We're still planning it all, and that's what we're doing. But that's going to be our big fundraiser for the year. We hopefully are going to get quite a lot of money to give to Nell for the research.
Wonderful. And when is that happening? Have you got dates in mind already in the diary yet?
Yeah, it's the 27th, 28th of July. It's a Saturday and Sunday. There's camping up there. There's all sorts up there. And also, if people want to see what we're doing, on the 6th of July, 2 weeks before, we have High Chelmer, and we have 3 very big race cars going into High Chelmer promoting the event.
Excellent. Okay. So let's see if we can put a bit of an appeal out to see if there's anything else that you need for your event. Is there anything particularly you can think of that you're looking for, as in maybe sponsors, or let's see if we can, sort of create a bit of awareness and maybe get some more involvement in to help with the organising and the financial side of it and the fundraising. So I'll ask that question. So it sounds like the event itself is well underway, but of course with these things I guess there's always scope for more involvement and for more people to come and get involved. So are you looking for anything in particular for this event? So are you looking for anything in particular for this event in the way of support?
Yeah, I mean we've got a lot of the major car dealers coming. We've got Lamborghini and Rolls Royce and Bentley and right the way through we've got Ford, Subaru, people like that. It's a car show. There are hundreds of cars around Essex that are really interesting, and this is what we want it to be. We want people to bring very interesting odd cars, all sorts of things like that. So my request to everybody in Essex is, if you've got a car and you know that's strange, supercar or whatever, please contact me. We've got the whole of the infield at the racecourse. We've got loads of land, and we could make this the biggest car show in Essex, and it's for charity. Not one penny of it goes in my pocket. I mean, I've been working on it for 6 months already, but we've got the space up there. Please contact me.
Just remind us about the dates of that event.
It's the 27th and 28th of July. It's the first week of the school holidays, so all of you that aren't going on holiday in the first week, it gives you somewhere to take your children, somewhere to have a good day out.
And if people want to get in touch and have perhaps a supercar that they'd like to show off, bring along, how can they get in touch with you?
You can come on to Sharon Dunster Foundation at Gmail. You can contact me. Shall I put my phone number out? Sorry.
I'd probably just give your email address. So
Yeah.
just start again and just give the
Okay.
full email address and say
Right.
the best way to get in contact is
The initial contact with me, if you come to me on SD Tooling, TOOLING at tiscali.co.uk. That'll get you straight in as a direct line to me, and we can talk about what your car is and what you want to show off.
Right.
One of the other things that we do have, we have a situation where we have the Wall of Death. It's the oldest Wall of Death in the country. They knew Sharon, they were friends of ours, we've met them at various events. The big sponsor that we'd like to have, and this is really putting a request out, it costs £3,000 to have this Wall of Death at the show. If anybody wants to come forward and sponsor it, they can have the Wall of Death draped in their company, or whatever they want to advertise. But it will be fantastic, because the reality of it is, if I can get this extra £3,000 sponsorship, I will have the whole event paid for before we even open the doors. So everybody that comes through the door is giving their money to charity. There is a website where you can look into it. It explains all about mucosal melanoma. It's got an events page, it's got videos on it, and that's www.sharondunsterfoundation.com. That has a lot of things on there, all about what we're doing, a bit more insight here. The other thing that we do have is we have a Facebook page which is very active at the moment. This is really about the show, which is called Brake Horsepower 2019. If you go on Facebook and put in Brake Horsepower using a capital B, a capital H and a capital P, that's the easy way, because otherwise you'll get a lot of information about brake horsepower and engines here. But if you go on there, search it out, it's got the people that are coming, all the links to various people. The show is very much it's a car show, but it's also there for children. We've got birds of prey, we've got sporting bear dream rides, we've got all sorts of things for children. There'll be a sort of a pampering area, various other things. Yeah, it's a family event. Don't be sort of misguided, but it's a car show. It's far more. It's a whole 2-day event.
But it's gonna take money, a whole lot of spending money. It's gonna take plenty of money to do it right, child. It's gonna take time, a whole lot of precious time. It's gonna take patience and time. it, to do it right. Sharon.